A fundamental understanding of growing a bonsai starts with keeping it alive, keeping it healthy, and how to prune. It is early spring and it's a perfect time to start pruning my bonsai because they've extended so much. It really is time to prune. Now, how many reasons do you know to prune your bonsai? I'm sorry, no jokes this time, no work on trees, just the basics, the fundamentals, the theory on why to prune your bonsai and why not. I can name 5. If some are new, put me a comment down below. I'd like to know how many of this is new to you. Now let's go through the 5 reasons why you should prune your bonsai in spring or in winter or in summer. 5 main reasons. Psst! Hey, there's a secret number 6 all the way at the end. And as a bonus, when do you not prune your bonsai? Let's go into detail. Number 1, to keep them small. To keep it small, right? It's quite simple. A bonsai is a tree in a pot. And if you look at these trees in a pot, this is the second growing season and they're already about 2 foot, over half a meter tall. If I just let these grow, they grow into a very, very big tree. So by pruning the tree, I just keep it small. It's not more difficult than that. So yeah, that's one of the main purposes. Also, once it has formed as a bonsai, you keep it in a pot and you don't prune it, it will still have that urge to grow up as a normal big tree. It will select 1 or 2 branches and they will start shooting and they become a trunk. It's not what we're after in bonsai. In bonsai we do want the trunk, but once we've set the trunk and the main branches, we just want it to stay small. So yeah, regular pruning keeps the tree smaller and keeps it as a bonsai. Number 2, to weaken strong zones. Now, as trees have this desire to grow up, the second reason is to weaken the strong zones, or actually to strengthen the weak zones. Trees, particularly something like a larch, they want to grow strong and tall. And therefore, they are quite eager to let the top grow a lot and the lower branches don't grow all that much. And actually, if they don't get enough sun, the lower branches in a larch might actually die off. This is a strong part of a tree. This is a weaker part of the tree. And of course, it is not a black and white, it is a gradient. The strongest branch is the one that sits all the way on the top, and the weakest branch typically is the one that sits all the way down below. Except for in the cascade, there the tip of the trunk is all the way at the bottom and therefore acts as the lowest branch. And the cascading top, that's the strongest part. You can see here in this tree quite clearly, look at this growth compared to that growth. So one of the ways that you can now make sure that the tree reduces the strength here and increases the strength lower down is reducing the growth here. Actually, I shouldn't do this with my fingers. I should bring out a pair of scissors and do this in a clean way. Effectively, by doing this, we are removing the growing tip here, which is telling the roots normally, hey, I am growing, give me more nutrients, give me more water. By removing these, I'm therefore also removing the signaling hormones to the roots that I should push these more. But also because there is less foliage here to ask for all these nutrients, the lower branches therefore get more strength. Pruning these back might mean that you prune your larch on the top twice or 3 times as often as in the bottom. This is of course a very, very subjective thing. You have to judge which branches you feel are weak and which ones are strong and when to prune. Now, with all these tips removed, this tree is now ready again to start pushing the lower buds. Of course, at the same time, I need to make sure that I keep this well watered and in full sun. Otherwise, it still doesn't make a difference. But pruning your tips, particularly in the top half, helps enormously. I have been challenged to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I don't think it's gonna work, but it would help me if you would now click the subscribe button and keep watching these videos. Share my videos around in your network and just let me know what you think of this content and what was new and what was not. So this is pretty much all you need to do to reduce the top strength and increase the strength of the lower branches. That was number 2 of the reasons why to prune the bonsai. Number 3, keep inner growth alive. The main reason for leaves on a tree are to produce sugar. They capture the sunlight, convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars, and that feeds the tree. So if a leaf doesn't get any sunlight, what does the tree do? It's not worth keeping, right? And that's why on the inside the leaves can start to turn yellow. It starts with leaves. However, if small branches on the inside don't receive light, then the tree might decide this whole branch is just going to die off. I'm not going to invest in this individual branch. So one of the reasons why we prune in summer is to reduce the outer foliage mass, and with that allow light to enter into the canopy, keeping those smaller branches on the inside alive. This may seem like it is exactly the same reason as number 5, promote backbudding, but it really isn't. Backbudding is not just about sunlight. Of course, if you get backbudding and there is no sunlight, there's not going to be backbudding. So yes, getting sunlight on the inside of your canopy, that helps in the backbudding process, and it is needed to get backbudding. But it is not what triggers the backbudding only. Let me get into that at point number 5. But first let's go look at number 4. Number 4, A, to get rid of pests and diseases, and B, number 4A, to stop pests, and B, reduce diseases. Right, the fourth reason. A, pests. What pests do I refer to? Predominantly aphids, but also slugs. And at some points there's some beetles as well that might really like to chew on your leaves, suck the sap out of it, and literally taking the life away from your tree. The sap taking all those nice sugars from the leaves into the trunk, to the roots and the rest of the tree to function. They just tap onto it and they start drinking it and live from it. And where do they do that? They prefer to not do that in the plain open areas. They do it in places where they're nicely hidden, so that predators of these insects don't get to them as easily, they don't spot them that easily. And for a beech, that means that if your canopy fills up very tightly, you'll get beech louse on it. It's a white fly, it's white little animals. As you can see here on the leaf, that is where they like to be. I pruned this morning to reduce the hiding spaces that these animals have. I will soon spray it with an insecticide and hopefully be done with it for the season. So that's the part of pests. Now how about diseases? Well, when talking about diseases in bonsai and pruning, I predominantly think of fungal infections. Oaks, for instance, they are very prone to mildew. Mildew is a fungal infection and it really has a chance to attack your trees mostly when the leaves stay humid for a very long time. Well, when do they stay humid? Of course, in bad weather with a lot of fog and a lot of rain, or when you water your trees over the top of the canopy, but also if it is nice and closed. With lots and lots of leaves on your tree, there's no airflow going through, so the moment any moisture builds up, and that could even be the evaporation from the leaves will stay moist. And that creates a perfect microclimate for fungal developments. So to reduce mildew on your trees, one of the things you do is you prune them. You don't just prune the extension growth, but you actually remove individual leaves, or you shorten individual leaves so that sunlight and wind can more easily go through your trees, keeping them nice and healthy. Number 5. Trigger backbudding. Now for a tree to start backbudding, of course, light is important on the inside of the tree. So what we mentioned at point number 3, up there, you need to make sure that your tree is nice and open so sunlight can enter into your tree. But for many trees, that's not the only thing that triggers backbudding. As a tree, as mentioned before, they just want to grow big. They want those branches to extend. They want to grow outward. That means there's no real reason for creating lots and lots of buds on the inside. So what we do is we prune the tree. When you prune the tree, what do you actually do? Well, you remove the growing tips of the branch. What does a growing tip produce? I mentioned already sugars. But next to that they also produce auxins. And auxins is a hormone and it does a lot of things. I already mentioned stimulating the roots to grow. It signals to the root, hey, there is healthy tissue here, we're growing, you should grow as well. But at the same time it also induces a dormancy response in inner buds. These buds, they are sitting there just waiting And as long as they get enough signals that the outside of the branch is doing well and is growing fast, they don't really see a reason for growing. They just sit there as a sort of a backup, a security. By removing these growing tips, the hormone balance is disturbed. And at that point, all of a sudden, these inner buds start to grow. There are other balances in play, but in short, removing the growing tips from the extending growth of a branch will trigger the dormant buds on the inside, but also the reduced absorbance from the water and the nutrients that come from the roots are being pushed in to the branch, means that the inner buds all of a sudden have more resources and they also start pushing. How it works exactly is not per se important. It is, however, important to realize what's happening. Remove the end tips, inner buds are activated to start to grow. That's a very good fifth reason why you should prune your bonsai every once in a while. Of course, this ties in with number one. You can't prune back if there's no growth on the inside. Having all this growth in the inside, I can now decide, and I'm not going to, but I could decide, I'm just going to prune back here, going to prune back there, and let all these buds here take over from this branch. So you can shorten your branch to existing growth, which is always a lot safer than just shortening a branch without any existing growth. You are sure there are branches that take over from the extending growth. So pruning back creates inner buds and allows for pruning back the branches, particularly on junipers and on pines. This is really important because to get back budding, you really need to tease them by letting the branches extend and then clipping out the growing bud tips. And then there was the secret number 6, why we prune our bonsai. And actually, this could be the number one reason why most bonsai are pruned. In bonsai, we are after the illusion of a big mature tree that has a good trunk, but the branches are in scale. They should stay thin. And the bigger your tree becomes, the more branches it grows, the more important it is that these branches do not fatten up. And when do branches fatten up? Exactly when they extend. When they have a lot of foliage and a lot of branch materials, that is when branches fatten up. Therefore, in early spring, growing tips from maples are removed. We don't allow these branches to extend. That on the one hand will create short internodes, which is also nice for the scaling because you get more branches in the same length of branch. But more importantly, it reduces the thickening of these branches. So to create thin branches on your bonsai, it is important to not let your branches extend all that long. Which brings me to the bonus. When do you not prune your bonsai? Of course, if you want your trunk to fatten, if you want branches to fatten, or if you, like here, have a big scar that you want to close, if you want the tree to power up, if you want it to get stronger, that's when you refrain from pruning. You don't prune a very sick tree. You don't prune a tree that you are air layering. You don't prune a tree that has had very heavy root work and needs to rebuild the roots. You don't prune a tree that you just want to grow. And to develop a bonsai is to allow it to grow. So extensive pruning needs to be done for the right reason, at the right time, on the right species, and not just because somebody tells you, prune back your branches to 2. I hope this was informative. I hope this helped you. And I hope you had a little bit of fun watching it. I'm sorry, no jokes this time, no work on trees. Just the basics, the fundamentals, the theory on why to prune your bonsai and why not. A fundamental understanding of growing a bonsai starts with keeping it alive, keeping it healthy, and how to prune. This was Jelle, growing bonsai. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching.